Welcome back to part 2 of Marketing for Performers, or How to Get Yourself a Gig. And in part 1, we went over the first 2 parts of the strategy, as well as some things to have in your back pocket. Part 1, make a list of stuff you want to do, opportunities that you want to pursue, things that really interest you. Remember, life is too short to go to the boring parties. Only pick the parties that sound fun to you. Part 2, identify the gatekeepers or the people that you need to speak to pursue that opportunity. So hopefully you have that list in front of you. Did you write it down? Write it down. Okay, good. Without that list, this next part just doesn't work. It's just strategy that's going to go, milling around in the back of your skull. And why? So here in part 2, the strategy is we take that list that you totally have right in front of you, right? Okay, good. And you do the impossible, unthinkable thing and reach out and touch faith. So this is you knocking on the door. And the things that you want to keep in mind when knocking on the door are: have an objective. Know what you want out of this conversation. Remember, you're not trying to get a contract in like a permanent show from one lousy email. The thing that you want to do when you're reaching out to a gatekeeper or someone else who can put you in touch with the people you need to be put in touch with is to make a connection and to begin a conversation. Because getting work is not about being good. It helps, but it's about relationships. So forming a relationship with the people who run these companies and who guide and guard these opportunities that you're interested in is necessary. So that's step 1. Know what your ask is. You are asking for something. Know what it is, because if you don't know, they're not going to know. They're going to be like, why is this person writing to me? Who are you? Some different examples of what asks or objectives are could be asking to be added onto a roster of talent. For example, if you're writing to an events coordinator or an agency of some kind. Or you could be asking for permission to send them your promotional materials, which you totally have. Also, as a side note, these bigger companies that might be on your list of cool stuff I want to do, they usually have email lists that are specifically geared towards talent and artists. So if you have a bigger company on your list, go to their website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, where it says careers or opportunities or something. There will usually be a link to sign up for a mailing list where you will be notified of the next available audition. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still do this thing that I'm about to tell you how to do. Other asks include asking for a collaboration. This is also great for reaching out to videographers and photographers if you need those materials we discussed in part 1 and don't yet have them. Or any way that you want to be of service. So how do you want to be of service? What do you want out of this conversation? So know your ask before you sit down and reach out to them. So before we get into the real nitty-gritty, here are some most common mistakes to avoid. Common mistake number 1, it's all about you. And you don't mention them at all. It's just all about you. Common mistake number 2, making it just way too long in general. Brevity is king. Queen. Whatever. Common mistake number 3, not having an objective, not having a clear ask. Common mistake number 4, the absence of any relevant supporting materials. A link, a phone number, a photo, anything that will help them see and understand who you are and what you want from them. Common mistake number 5, asking way too many questions. One ask per message. Just one. Because you want to make it as easy as possible for this person to get back to you. It's about them, not you. So make it easy on them and have one clear ask. And common mistake number 6, which just breaks my heart, is people trying to sound professional. I should put that in quotes, professional, because people want to sound professional, so they end up coming off as too formal and kind of like they have a giant stick. Never mind. Anyway, remember that these are people and human beings. And if you feel intimidated by writing to someone that you don't know, just remember, and this is always, always true, everyone poops. So rather than trying to come off as like too formal, too professional, which comes off a little stiff, and you're trying to build a relationship, so that's not going to work great. Instead, try being authentic. I know the advice is really tired and irritating of just be yourself, but honestly, put a little personality in this. Sprinkle a little you juice over this letter. It's going to make it much more engaging for them and much easier for them to respond to you. You can be personable and approachable and still be professional. I would add that being clear is always going to be more useful to you than being clever. Clarity over cleverness. So right about now you might be thinking, are you seriously just asking me to reach out to a casting director that I don't know? That's exactly what I'm asking you to do. And I wouldn't be asking you to do it if I didn't know that it works. It doesn't work every time. This isn't an exact science. You're just trying to establish a connection, create a relationship, make a conversation start happening. And cold solicitations do work. If you can get an introduction from a mutual acquaintance, that can improve your response rate by a large amount, upwards of 85%, more likely to get a response when someone else introduces you who you both know. It establishes credibility and makes you more trustworthy. So if you think that you don't have someone in common, luckily the internet exists, and you can look at Facebook, you can look at Instagram and see who do you have in common, and ask your common people if they would be willing to make an introduction for you. Always, always, always a better idea to be introduced to a gatekeeper than to write in a cold solicitation. And I will show you how to do that as well. It's one of the things that I'm going to coach you on. What do you say to these people? Why? How do we begin? So if you can get an introduction, fantastic. If not, there's still basically the same parts that need to go into a solicitation. And those are a warm greeting. Introduce yourself briefly. Create a personalized connection. And this is where the template should be blank. This should be a fill in the blank according to who it is that you're writing to, why their company, what about their show or their work inspires you. Make it very clear that you are familiar with what they do and that you also resonate with what they do. All artists and creators want to be seen. Make them feel seen. This also means that whenever you're reaching out to someone and trying to form a connection for this kind of work, mean it. People can tell when they're being given a canned response, which is why in your template, this should be blank for you to fill in specifically regarding who it is that you're speaking to. This would also be the ideal place to name drop the friend that you have in common, whoever introduced you, or just someone that recommended them to you. Part 4, make your ask. Make it clear. And make one. If you're having trouble coming up with an objective for this conversation, ask yourself, what is the problem that you are solving for them? Because it's about them. Part 5 of the structure of a reach out is a warm closing statement. Part 6 is including relevant materials. Photos, a link to a video, a link to your website, your online promo kit, a phone number, a link to your scheduling software if what you want is a conversation. And finally, part 7, which is not included in the original email, but is still very important, follow up after a designated period of time. How long do we wait after the first send to follow up with them if we haven't heard back? 1, if you hear back, immediately follow up. If you haven't heard back, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, or in some cases 6 months. So you kind of have to play it by ear and be logical, thinking about like where are they given what you know about their organization in terms of what's going on with them right now. If you email someone in the middle of their busiest season, you're likely not to hear back from them for a while. This is also where I tend to see people caught on the hurdle of, well, I wrote to them and they didn't write me back and they're just going to think I'm annoying. That's okay. Be annoying. No, seriously, don't worry about it. A lot of times, really busy people get so many messages, oftentimes many messages like this, and even if they're interested in someone who's writing to them, they forget because they're really, really busy people. So if you follow up with them, and by the way, a nice little bit of verbiage you can use for that is just wanted to float this to the top of your inbox. It's so breezy. It's a courtesy. It's a courtesy to a busy person when you follow up with them and remind them of who you are. So I want to show you how to do a couple of these live, and I think that the first thing that we'll start with is how to ask for an introduction. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. The first template that we're going to create, let's say template for asking for an introduction. Now remember that once you have created a template that suits you and sounds like a real actual human being wrote it, you can copy and paste that into your canned responses, which is what we covered in part 1 of this series. The canned responses in your Gmail folder will just make it super easy and fast for you to reach out to people and touch faith. So, part 1, asking for an introduction, warm greeting. Boom, done, nailed it. Introducing yourself briefly and reminding them of how they know you. Boom. Next, make your ask. We're going to take this one step farther and say something that is really difficult to say no to. Okay, so here we have a completed template. We start with the warm greeting, remind them of how they know you, make your ask, make it clear, and make it easy as possible for them to say yes to you. In this case, even going so far as to saying, I will write the introduction myself. You can fill in the blanks. Would that be okay? That way, all this person has to do to give you what you want is to send you back a one-word email that says yes. Super, super easy. Okay, so now that we know how to ask for an introduction, we can assume that we've got it, or we can assume that we didn't get it. Either way, this next one is a cold solicitation. So of course, once you have this sorted, you will copy, paste it, and put it into your canned responses with the appropriate label so that when you do need to make a cold solicitation to like info@thiscoolshow.com, then you'll have something to say. So remember that subject lines are important. It is a lot better to be clear than it is to be clever, so be as specific as you can here. Don't be afraid of a long subject line. Just try to avoid exclamation points because they can get flagged in your emails, psychic powers to know who is writing spam. Something that I've had success with is just saying artist inquiry and add any additional details here, like artist inquiry for the fall programming at blank, or artist inquiry for your artist roster. Okay, step 1, warm greeting. Aces. Not hard at all. Step 2, introduce yourself briefly. I'm a metalworker from the faraway land of blank. Khaleesi wrote and introduced us yesterday, so I just wanted to follow up with you privately. This is if you did get an introduction. You can also choose to say something like, you can still name drop someone that you have in common, saying they recommended that I contact you at this address. Whatever it is that you have in common, find some common ground. Next, connect with them and tell them why you appreciate their work. I'm a huge fan of your horde. I've been following your travels for a while. In particular, I think your horses are of the finest caliber and your blood riders are second to none. Please don't use language like this. This is obviously satire. I noticed that your last metal worker was honorably dispatched in the Battle of Blank, and I would be delighted to send you examples of my work in the hopes that you might consider me to be of service. So here I'm just briefly saying something extra about myself and further illustrating how I can solve a problem for the person that I'm writing to. Reinstate the simple ask, then a warm closing, and don't underestimate the power of a simple thanks and have an awesome day. No one doesn't like to be told to have an awesome day, as far as I know. And then include, again, your name, helpful links. You can include a photo or two. Now, you're not going to send him a whole crap ton of pictures of your metalwork. I hope y'all are following this metaphor because I think it's fabulous. Anyway, you don't want to overload this person with too much information. You just want to ensnare their interest, strike up a conversation, make a connection with them, make them feel seen, and that you are actually, you know their work and you are familiar with what they need. So those are two off-the-cuff examples of how you can reach out to someone, ask them for an introduction, super simple, and you can offer to write the introduction yourself to make it super easy for them. Then all they have to do is say yes to you. As well, a cold solicitation following the 7 things you need to include. A warm greeting, introduce yourself briefly and not necessarily in this order, y'all. Make a connection with them, show them that you're familiar with what they do and what they need. Tell them how you can solve a problem for them. Make a clear ask, warm closing, include relevant information, relevant supporting materials, etc. And don't forget part 7, follow up after a designated period of time. This is where boomerang can be super easy because even a sent email, you can boomerang that back to you 2, 4, 6 weeks later so that you're reminded, oh, I need to follow up because I haven't heard back from that super busy person yet. So yes, it is incredibly simple. It seems like too easy to work, and yet it does. I wish you all of the best of luck. Remember to make your asks really clear, be personable, not too formal. Use the canned responses, use boomerang, and if it's appropriate, include a link to your scheduling software if what you want is like a phone call or something. You can use these templates for lots of different applications. So know what your objective is and go get them, Tiger. Go out there and get some gigs. Thank you for putting up with my nerdy references, and here's one more. May the odds be ever in your favor.